Welcome to part 2 of our Interrail trip across Europe. To refresh your memory, 5 years ago, I took a big trip across Europe with my friend Hans. We started in our hometown of Leiden in the Netherlands, and so far we've traveled down to Switzerland, took a beautiful ride on the Golden Pass Railway, and traveled to Budapest in Hungary. Our pass allows us to travel on 7 different dates within a period of 30 days. While we've had a great time exploring the Hungarian capital, there are more trains we want to ride and more cities to discover. By the way, stay tuned for the end of the video to learn about some exciting new videos that are coming to the channel. Anyway, it's the 6th day of our 12-day journey and we find ourselves at Budapest Daily Station. It's 6 in the morning and our train to Zagreb, Croatia is already waiting for us. Eager to take another country off our list, we climbed aboard. What we did not know was that this would definitely be the most eventful leg of our entire trip. So on the platform we noticed a large group of high school kids. I think they were from Spain and they were all headed towards the front of the train. So we didn't really want to be in the big crowd. We decided to get on in like the second car from back. That seemed like a safe option. So as our train is running along the shores of Lake Balaton, all of a sudden we see all these high school kids head through the corridor in our car towards the back of the train, the back car. And it's a large group and they're all moving, so we know something's up. So we ask the conductor what's going on, and the conductor informs us that the car we're in, as well as all the other cars, are not actually going to Zagreb. It was being detached, and the only way to get to Croatia was to get into the car behind us. The car that was now filled to the brim with people. It was kind of fun to be stuck in the crowd, however. We were in a vestibule with travelers from all over the world, and we kind of just made the most out of the situation. Though I did feel bad for the Korean couple who was sitting in the toilet. So here's what happened. We regularly use the train in the Netherlands, and in the Netherlands, like, all the information you need to know about your train is on the screens on the platform. And so we hadn't really stopped to think that that might not be the case everywhere. And in Hungary and Croatia, oftentimes the information is displayed on like a paper sign on the doors of the train. We're also not super used to like locomotive hauled trains with cars being split up to different destinations. So really, yes, it was a lack of research, but also it hadn't crossed our minds to check if our individual car was actually going to cross the border. It's just not what we were used to in our context. I uploaded my original video as kind of a warning to travelers who might make the same mistake we did, since we weren't the only people that day that were in the wrong car. Of course, this provoked the necessary ridicule from those lovely people on the internet who know everything, but you know what? Accidents happen, mistakes are meant to be learned from. Border control took forever. Back then, Croatia was not a Schengen member state, so they had to check everyone's passports and check the train for smuggled goods. Several people did not have the proper documentation, so you can imagine the relief when after hours of waiting, we were finally moving again. Riding in a crowded little train to Zagreb is one thing, but the Croatian railways had other plans. Track construction. At our first stop, we find out that there is track construction ahead and our train won't go any further. We have to make our way over to a replacement train. This was a 6112 series train built domestically by Croatian company Končar. I think they're kind of funny looking and I was eager to try one out. Even better, we beat the crowds to the train and were able to enjoy the sheer luxury of a seat. Now on to Zagreb, right? Wrong. Only a little bit later, this train stopped too. And that's when we found out we would continue our journey by bus. So we get to the bus and Hans and I managed to score a seat in the front row, and that was really cool because the bus took us over these really narrow country roads. Like All the other vehicles around us were tractors. The bus driver was like watching a sports game on his phone or talking to his coworker like the entire time while driving. Sometimes we were even a little bit elevated, so it was kind of a thrilling experience, especially when we saw this giant truck with like an oversized load approaching us. And it was obvious one of us was going to have to move. Well, so the driver, who's still, you know, pretty distracted, just puts the bus into reverse, parks us onto a nearby soccer field, lets the oversized load pass, and then we're just back on our way to Zagreb. Another suburban train later, and we were finally in the capital city, Zagreb. So after we finally got to the train station, we walked to our hostel, put our stuff there. It was a pretty nice hostel, and then we spent that evening and all of the next day exploring Zagreb. Now, it is a beautiful city. There are definitely beautiful parts and ugly parts, just like every city. But I don't know, I don't think it was my favorite when you look at all the different places that we went to. I do want to go back to Croatia one day because I've heard that the national parks and the seaside are beautiful. Everyone who's been there has told me those are a must-see. So yeah, I definitely do want to go back someday. On the morning of our 8th day, we were back at Zagreb station extremely early. After our last trip, we wanted to do everything in our power to prevent any mistakes on our part. Today would see us taking a Eurocity train from Zagreb to Vienna, cutting across Slovenia. We did not need to worry, however. This would be an uneventful, peaceful train ride. Exactly what we were hoping for. It wasn't long before we reached the border with Slovenia. So the border agent takes a look at my ID, and then he looks at me and he says, "Your hair is different." I explained to him that I got a haircut and thanked him for noticing. Without too much of a delay, we entered into Slovenia, childhood home of the brains behind the White House tennis pavilion. Slovenia is relatively small, and our train would cross it from the south to the north. Our train cars, which belong to the Austrian railways, were very comfortable, perfect for taking in the lush green mountain scenery. Slovenia is beautiful. Our initial plan was to spend more time in Slovenia, maybe even stay there, but when we finalized the cities that we wanted to see, unfortunately that just wasn't an option. But I do know for sure that I want to come back and explore more of this country. After a very relaxing few hours, our Eurocity had brought us to Vienna, capital city of Austria, home to many international organizations, and the place where Mozart lived the last 10 years of his life. Vienna was once the center of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and though Austria today is a republic, the city is still filled with the magnificent palaces of past ages. Getting around was easy. The nice thing about Vienna is that there's a tunnel that goes through the center of the city that is used by S-Bahn trains. Now, those are part of the National Railway Network, so on the days that we were traveling to or from Vienna, we could just use our Interrail pass to travel within the city. But in the intermediate day when we weren't traveling, we could just buy a city transit ticket like we had done in all the other cities and still use those S-Bahn trains. So we always had a ticket to cover our train travel. What we really wanted to do was see live classical music. I mean, after all, Mozart lived here, so many other famous composers spent time here, but you know, that's expensive to go see a show. But then we were walking past the Musikverein and a street vendor offered us tickets for just 15 euros. Now, they were standing tickets and they were for that night, but still, once we realized that, you know, this was actually legit, we pounced on those tickets. We bought them right away. We rushed to our hotel to change into the nicest attire we had packed, and we made our way to the Musikverein, home of the Vienna Philharmonic Orchestra. It was so cool. I mean, the musicians were all wearing wigs, the music was beautiful. Maybe it's weird for guys our age to be that excited about going to a classical music concert, but come on. It's Mozart in Vienna. In an alternate timeline where the wall had stood in Vienna, we might have had a President John F. Kennedy say, "Ich bin ein Wiener." But the wall was in Berlin, not Vienna, and so he said,
Ich bin ein Berliner.
Berlin just so happened to be our next destination, but we had time to spare, plenty of time, so we decided to visit another European capital first. Bratislava is the capital of Slovakia, and it is located very close to Vienna. We traveled there in the morning, spent a little over an hour exploring the town, and then we were planning to take a train to Prague and transfer to Berlin. There are actually two ways to take a train from Vienna to Bratislava. Electric trains take this southern route, which terminates at Bratislava Petržalka station. The tracks headed to Bratislava's main station are not electrified yet. We took the diesel route because our train to Prague would leave from the main station, and so we could put our bags in a locker there. With our bags stowed away, we strolled through the city. It's charming, but not nearly as large as some of the other cities we had visited so far. We particularly enjoyed seeing the castle. We made sure to get back to the station nice and early. Missing this train would strand us somewhere very far away from our hotel in Berlin. The only problem was, while we were on time, our Euro City train to Prague was not. Okay, we thought, it'll be fine, it can catch up the delay. It did not. As we crossed the Czech countryside, our delay was adding up. I tried to relax in our comfortable compartment, but it was difficult to do so. I'm sitting there and I am visibly getting a little bit stressed out. This is not a connection we wanted to miss, and we had actually given ourselves a fair amount of time to make it. I don't know how Hans was feeling at this time. He didn't really talk to me that much, and maybe he was stressed on the inside. I never really asked him. While we were still in the suburbs of Prague, we moved towards the door of the train. Our connection had shrunk to a mere 3 minutes, and missing this would mean we would be stuck. While finding a different hotel would have been one thing, we also had only one travel day left on our Interrail pass after today. We needed that day to get back to the Netherlands. While by the door, we met a lady named Petra. She asked us where we were going. We explained that we were headed to Berlin. So our train arrives in Prague. We bolt out of the door, but Petra is faster. She ran. She was gone. It was weird. We didn't know what she was going to do, but we didn't have time to think about that. We had to make it to our train to Berlin. So we run really fast. We actually make it on the train, and we're so relieved. We just find a compartment that we can sit in. And once we were getting comfortable, we hear a little knock on the window, and it's Petra. So we run to the door to go talk to Petra, and she's like, "I'm so glad you guys made the train. I ran to meet the conductor and I talked to him for a few minutes to distract him, and he seemed like a really nice guy, but I'm so glad you guys made your train. Enjoy Berlin." I added Petra on Facebook to send her a thank you message. She was a hero in our time of need. As late afternoon fell over the beautiful hills of the Ústí nad Labem region, we could finally breathe a huge sigh of relief. We had a compartment to ourselves, and it was at that point that we really began to notice that these Czech seats were really comfortable. Yeah, these Czech trains were definitely the most comfortable of all the trains we rode on this trip.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome on board the Eurocity train 170 Karl Maria von Weber from Praha hlavní nádraží to Berlin Hauptbahnhof. This train will stop at Děčín hlavní nádraží, Bad Schandau, Dresden Hauptbahnhof, Dresden Neustadt, and Berlin Südkreuz.
Late that night, we arrived in Berlin. We got off at Südkreuz on the south side of the city, and then took an S-Bahn train to our hotel. I think the hotel in Berlin was probably the nicest hotel we stayed in. It was annoying because I had already paid for it, and then there was a mix-up and I ended up paying for it again, and it took me about 6 months to get my money back, but oh well. Day 11, the second to last day of our Interrail trip. We were in Berlin, the German capital. With the stress of yesterday behind us, we were both very eager to begin exploring. So we obviously attended high school in the Netherlands. We took German classes while we were there, history classes, and in the Dutch curriculum, like, you spend a lot of time learning about Berlin and the Berlin Wall and the Cold War. So we wanted to see all these places that we had learned so much about in school. The sites we saw included the Alexanderplatz, Gedächtniskirche, the Wall, and the KaDeWe department store. I took a quick peek at the impressive main station as well. If you want to see more from Berlin, 2 years later I traveled here with my brother. I also have a video explaining the transit system up on the channel, so be sure to check all those videos out. Our hope was to see the different places we had learned about in school, to feel the history around us. Berlin did not disappoint, and it was a good last stop on our trip. But now, on day 12, it was time to go home. Since the past 2 weeks had involved several early mornings and late nights, we had planned to take it easy this last day. Take an ICE, change in Duisburg, and then take another ICE to the Netherlands. Having spent so much time together in close quarters, the question of course is, were Hans and I still friends? Yeah, of course we were still friends. I mean, we're still friends today. Obviously, when you're spending that much time together, sometimes there are moments where you just kind of sit there in silence and just chill out, but we had many of great conversations. We laughed a lot. I noticed that he started listening to the music that I was listening to, and I started listening to the music that he was listening to, and yeah, I mean, being able to go on a trip like this with a friend is just such a great opportunity, and we both really enjoyed it. I just talked to him about this the other day because I was telling him that I was making these videos for you guys. There were a few delays once we arrived in the Netherlands, who's surprised, and we had to do a little detour through Amsterdam, but at long last we were back in Leiden with our moms waiting for us at the station. I hugged Hans goodbye, thanking him for coming up with this idea and for all the great times. So I hop on a bike, it's a short bike ride home, and just like that, I'm at the dinner table with my family. Just another normal dinner, as if I hadn't just taken the train through 10 different countries. So what's the big announcement? Well, if you're a fan of the big cross-continental train journeys like this one, you're in luck, because there's much more content like that coming to this channel. My brother just finished several Interrail journeys in Europe and will be sharing that footage with us. Plus, in the United States, this is what Lindsay and I have been up to recently.
We're taking the California Zephyr.
Today, Lindsay and I are riding the cable car, Caltrain, the Coast Starlight, the Amtrak Cascades, the Seattle Center Monorail, the Empire Builder. Let's go down to the platforms. But was it worth it?
It was pretty fun.
Yeah, it was pretty fun.